Jen got to the semi-finals in 2019, but since then she's been running her own business, Jenerates, selling unique tools and notions for sewing and craft all around the world, and they are seriously cool. As a knitter and crafty person, I was like blown away. But you've also been a litigation solicitor, a shop owner, a graphic designer, a card maker, and a charity advisor. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Jen Hogg.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. As Laura said, I've had quite a lot of hats in my time, and I did start off. I don't remember learning to sew or knit. I think I probably pestered my gran to teach me. I think probably she was at her machine. I was like, "Gran, show me how to do that." She'd have been, to get rid of me, she'd have shown me. And then I went to school, and I was quite academic. And I don't know about the rest of you, but certainly I felt, looking back, I was very funneled down an academic route because I had that ability, and so I ended up doing law and not going to art school, which was probably what I should have done, or tried to at least. But then I came full circle because I ended up stepping away from law when I had my family, because it's quite a difficult career when you've got young kids. My husband's a lawyer as well, so it's quite intense in terms of the hours you have to work. And that's when I opened my own shop, because I had a card business and it was quite difficult to find shops that were selling kind of design-led and craft at a kind of reasonable level. So then I started that business and sold that, started working for a charity, which was a medical charity, so that was a whole new area. But I was kind of working on a quasi-legal basis for them. And it was the IHPBA, which is the Medical Association, which kind of basically deals with this bit, so liver and pancreas. And that was fascinating to learn. I think it's always interesting to learn about new things. So I really enjoyed doing that for a couple of years. And then that came to an end. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? And I was in Mandor's, back in the day when Mandor's was a shop we went to, unfortunately. I know it's really still changed. When the Deutsches had it. And Maggie still worked behind the counter. If you know Mandor's, you know what I'm talking about. I went to Mandor's and there was a flyer on the counter and it said, "Apply for the sewing bee." And I thought, look at that, take that home. And the application process was almost at an end. And I kind of looked online, and actually the questionnaire that it made you fill out was really fascinating, because it really made, it's quite long, but it really made you think about why you sew, what your aims are with that, your sewing heritage, what you've sewn, all these different things. And I got kind of swept into just like thinking about all these different aspects of why I do what I do. And ended up thinking, I'll send that in, I'll never hear anything else from them. And at every stage in the process, they do say, if you don't hear back from us, then thanks very much, but that's the end of your sewing bee journey. So I kind of thought, well, that'll be that. And then the next thing, somebody phoned me. So I picked up the phone, like, hello. And he says, hello, this is Johnny here from the sewing bee. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. So they kind of go through various stages. And I'll tell you a bit about doing the programme. I'm going to talk about the tools that I've designed as well, but if I was you, I'd be quite interested to know about behind the scenes of doing a programme like the sewing bee, because all these programmes are the same format and they're probably all filmed in a similar way. Anyway, so Johnny phones me, and at this point they're trying to weed out who actually can sew and who just wants to be on telly. So he says, I've got some questions for you. I've got some sewing questions, technical sewing questions for you. So he's obviously just reading off this sheet. And he says to me, he says, Jen, tell me, what is shearing? And I said to him, well, in Scotland, that's what we do to sheep. I said, I think that's what I would call shirring, which is a kind of elastic process. So I think that being cheeky probably stood me in good stead, because I did think, I'm not going to hear anything else, and then they phoned me back, and then you go down to London for a sewing edition and screen tests and all the rest. And throughout all of this, I was totally relaxed. Okay, so I hadn't gone on a diet, I hadn't started whitening my teeth, I hadn't done anything because I thought there's no way I'm going to get through this. There's no way I'm going to be on telly. I don't want to be on telly. Okay, and then it was when they phoned me and they said, Jen, can you come down to London next week for the psychiatric evaluation? At that point I thought, oh my god, this is me down to now like the final 20 people. This is the final bit. And so I went down for that, and the psychiatrist lady, she was lovely. And she looked a bit like Miriam Margulies, which really made me like her first. And we were chatting away in her studio, her consulting room, which is in her house. And she said to me, we were kind of just chatting about things like having curly hair, you know. And then she said to me, right, we need to be serious for a moment though, we need to be serious. She said, I just want to check with you. She said, if you go on this programme, you have to understand that people will want to talk to you. They will want to talk to you about it. And they will be strangers to you. And they will come up to you in the streets and they will talk to you. How do you feel about that? And I said to her, I live in Glasgow. And that went over her head entirely. Like, that's what we do anyway. It's fine. So then they asked me to go on. And at that point I thought, you know, at that point I was 48. And I thought, I was kind of, as I say, between jobs. And I thought, what an interesting thing to get to see. Even if I go out and meet one. Even if I embarrass myself on national television, any of that is still going to be fascinating to see behind the scenes of one of these programmes and to see and understand how these are filmed. So I said yes, and I went on, and as Laura said, I did pretty well. I got through to the semi-final. And the whole experience of doing it, and interrupt me if you've got any questions, and yes, Patrick Grant is handsome in real life. I go to the pub with Esme, though, okay? Any day of the week I go to the pub with Esme. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it's interesting because I certainly came to understand pretty quickly that you are a commodity. So they are filming an entertainment programme. They need jeopardy. They need people to fail. And there were 3 very distinct groups of people in the studio. So you had the production team, you had the technical, the camera and sound guys, and you had the sewers. And so, you know, you were aware of these 3 camps, and you also became pretty aware that as the sewers, you are a commodity. You know, the whole kind of psychiatric evaluation, I think, was less about making sure that my welfare was okay, and more about making sure there wasn't something in my closet which might damage the brand of sewing. So, you know, the fact that I wasn't a former porn star and hadn't been in prison probably got me through. Yeah, so you kind of, I think once you get your head around the fact that that's how it works, then it's quite easy to accept that. And what that meant...
How many years ago were you?
So we filmed in 2018 and our series went out in 2019. And if you watch The Sewing Bee, we were Joe Rice's first series. So there was a break of 3 years in The Sewing Bee and they came back and we were the first series back, which meant that we were all... It was nice because we were all new to it together. And although Patrick and Esme had done it before, a lot of the production team were new. Joe was brand new to it, and it felt like we were all in the same boat. And so I think that was a really lucky year to do. And we also had a really lovely group of people, because what we realised really early on was that we weren't really going to treat it like a competition. We were going to, you know, all help each other and kind of have as much of a laugh as we could. But it's not without its frustrations. I mean, at one point, sorry, I do have slides, I should click through. What have I got here? Look, that's me. So that's my group of people, who are all, I'm still friends with all of them, and I would count quite a few of them among my best friends, which is amazing. So at the end of these programmes, when folks say, oh, I'm so sad, I've made friends for life, I'm so sad to leave, and you think, hi, right, you mentioned this, but actually you do make friends for life. I think it's such a strange experience to go through that you just bond immediately. And we also make friendships across the series. So I've got very good friends who are on in series before mine and series after mine. So like last week I was with Lizzie, who was on 2 years ago, and we had a great laugh. And you have that connection with people. And what's the next slide? Oh, this was, I brought him up, here's mine. So that was in Children's Week, and that was quite a good moment, because Patrick at that point was still being fairly uptight and really taking hats off. And people, this is also an interesting exercise in where ideas come from, I think. Because a lot of people said to me, you know, this is a transformation challenge which you have to make in an hour and a half. So you're told what you're going to use and what you've got to make, go, and you've got 90 minutes. And you have to create it. You have to think about it and sew it in that time and then present it. And this was a children's dressing up outfit made. Oh, you okay? Didn't break, did it? Good. So this is a children's dressing up outfit, and the primary thing we had to reuse were old fake fur coats. And we were allowed to use haberdashery, kind of things from the passementeries, the things from the haberdashery. And I decided to go for, this also had a big kind of cape covered with the fur for the feathers of this bird, and it had feet. and I wanted to make this hat for it. So it's not bad to come up with that idea. Like, you literally think for about 3 minutes before you have to start sewing. And people said to me, how did you get that idea in that time? And it was only afterwards I remembered that when I was about 5 years old, I went to see the Purvis Puppets in St Andrews, and they were a touring puppet group, and the puppets were huge, they were like life-size, and they were kind of lit against the black background, and they were very vivid colours. And I think basically I made a Purvis puppet. And I think that idea sat in my head from the age of 5 until it came out when I was on the sewing bee. And it also gave me quite a lot of cheer because, you know, I took my kids to the theatre and to cinema, and they were that kind of age, and they spent most of their time crawling around on the floor trying to find old sweeties. But actually something goes in. So, yeah, I quite like him as a mascot. So, so filming it's a really interesting experience. You fairly quickly realise you're mic'd up the whole time. And in our programme we started off with 10 stores and we had 6 cameras on at all times. So of course as people get eliminated, that becomes, well, it ends up with more cameras than people, so that's quite a lot. But you realise as well that you can kind of use to advantage the fact that they can always hear you in the production suite, you've got your mic on. So in week 3, I think it was, we had to do swimwear in the pattern challenge. So we had make a swimsuit in 2 hours, which is ridiculous. Anyway, so you kind of sew like fury, and at the very end of the challenge, my machine broke, and it was in vintage week, I think, so it was an old machine, and it just wouldn't work, it wouldn't sew the elastic, and I got the production, the sewing producer over, and I'm like, I can't, it's not sewing. And she's like, we've only got 10 minutes left of the challenge, we cannot stop filming at this point, because normally if there's something technical goes wrong, they'll stop filming for 5 minutes, they'll fix the problem, and the person who's had the problem will then get 5 minutes before everyone else can start. So that's kind of how we deal with that. So we can't stop filming, you just have to carry on, and just make the most of it, just do what you can, and we know that the machine's broken. And that's right, so I kind of make this pixie out of it. And it comes to judging, and Patrick was like, this isn't the standard we've come to expect from you, Jen, he said. No, this isn't really good enough. And I said, well, my machine broke, Patrick, and I was told to carry on. And he said, yes, a good workman never blames his tools. You sound like. So then we go up to the back of the room, and the kind of swords are left kind of at the back of the room while the judges consult as to who's going to win. And I know that I'm mic'd up, so I'm saying into my mic, and I use stronger language than this, but I'm saying, I'm really hacked off. I'm really hacked off about this, that wasn't fair because my machine did break, I was told to carry on, I'm really hacked off about this. And I said into my mind, this is where I stop being posh St Andrews and I start being a Glaswegian. And I went after judging and they gave me second place. Glasgow's officially scary. So yeah, you get kind of used to very quickly kind of dealing with things like that and kind of using it to your advantage a wee bit, I think. We're kind of understanding that you can, when they pop up in front of your desk and try to interrupt you, you can say 1 minute, 1 minute, and then you can answer them. We had a fairly snippy storyline producer, and they stay out of sight of the camera lines. So they're very good at kind of creeping in and then popping up in front of your desk like meerkats. And so this kind of girl would pop up and she'd say to me, what are you doing now, Jen? And I'd say, 1 minute, and she's like, yes, it's a shame we're making a television programme, isn't it? So you're like, yeah, 1 minute. But yeah, the other thing that you got used to very quickly was having to speak in complete sentences. So in all of these programmes, when you see the people speaking to screen, there has been a storyline producer saying, what are you doing now, what's this process? But they want you to answer in complete sentences so they don't have to have the producer's voice in it. And it's funny because it astonished me how quickly I got used to answering everything completely. So they'd say, what are you doing now? And I'd say, right now I'm sewing the head of the sleeve into the garment, instead of just saying sewing the sleeve. And unfortunately I reverted away from that as soon as I came away from filming, so I don't still do that to my family. Quite a good thing. So let me see what else I've got on here. Oh yeah, that's been on to my tools. Has anyone got any questions about filming a programme like that?
I'm kind of curious, so you were talking about that particular challenge, were there any challenges that you did that you thought, actually that is kind of a good creative exercise that you would kind of suggest doing again, or was it all just like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for those of you who don't know, there's kind of 3 challenges each week. There's a pattern challenge where they give you a pattern and you're told to go get fabric and make that. So that's a very technical thing because you're not having to fit it. And then there's the transformation challenge, which is 90 minutes. It's meant to be a little amuse-bouche for the sewers. So that's filmed to the end of day 1. And you're given a task in literally 90 minutes to do that task. And then there's a made-to-measure challenge where you have to make something that you've planned in advance and fit that to a model. So the transformation challenge is the one that was the most creative, and I really enjoyed it. A lot of people, it's very Marmite. I think if you ask the stores across the board, people either hate it or they love it. I really loved it, and yeah, there were processes in that I have used again, and that I thought were useful. So for example, in one of the weeks, they gave us buckets of the scraps that we had from our previous challenges. And we had to use those scraps to create something. Now that is right up my street. I really enjoy. I use a lot of waste in my sewing. In fact, I purposefully so I knitted the jumper. The jeans are 2 pairs of jeans. They've got hundreds of pockets. So that's nice together. And all of this is made from waste that I'm wearing today, apart from the jumper, which is wool I bought. So that kind of using waste and trying to do that in a way that actually would work was really interesting. They didn't necessarily. I actually made a skirt that would have been wearable, that would actually worked really well and kind of as a garment worked. But actually, what you realise in the transformation challenge is they usually want something that's more kind of outlandish or more, also less wearable and less practical, generally. Yeah. Some of the transformation challenges that they do, I've seen them do ridiculous things, and you do have to think as well, like for example the fake fur coats we all cut up for this children's outfit. That's kind of a waste in itself because they could be sold and used. But then if it encourages other people to think about using waste fabric or found fabric, then that's a good thing in itself. So yeah. Any other questions about filming at the moment or the kind of process? So then how am I doing for time?
There you go, 15 minutes.
Okay, grand. So I finished filming and I came back and I wasn't allowed to tell anyone that I'd done this. So my husband and my family knew, and I told a couple of friends locally, but I did take a decision not to tell my mum, because I thought if I tell my mum, she'll put an advert in the local paper. I better not do that. And then one of the things that happened with that, when the trailer came on the BBC for it, Joe sent us a copy of it the day it was going to come on. So we had it on WhatsApp before it came out. And so I sent it on to my mum. And one of the people in our group, I'll be back actually, so where is he? This guy here, Alexi. As you can see, he's tall and skinny with a bald head. My husband is tall and skinny with a bald head. So I sent the trailer to my mum, and I watched this mum. So she comes back, and she says, "Oh yes, you like that programme, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, watch it again." So then she comes back again, and she says to me, "Jen, is that your Neil?" And I'm like, "Neil can't sew on a button, Mum, watch it again." So that was quite entertaining. But we filmed in 2018, and then our series, so we finished in September, and then the editing process, we came out in the April, I think, of 2019, and kind of on for that April to June kind of period. And at that point, I had an idea in my head for a long time for a wee ruler that I wanted for my sewing. And it's a really simple concept, just a wee square ruler, but it starts at 0 in both the internal corner and the external corner, because that way, I can use it. I can always use it to get the best view of my work. So just a daft wee thing, and I could never find it. I could never find what I was looking for. And when just as my series came out, I was teaching knitting for Antje at the Yarn Cake in Glasgow. And one of the women that came to my knitting class, you get chatting as you do, and I said to her, "So what do you do?" And she said, "I've just moved back to Glasgow with my husband. We've got a laser cutting business." And I'm like, "Well, that's funny, because I've got an idea that I need a laser cutter for." So I made 100, designed it, and I used Illustrator. And I designed it, and we cut it, and at that point I had maybe 4,000 followers on Instagram. So at that time we were discouraged from doing social media with the programme. I think they were worried about what might happen on social media, but now it's kind of a different story. But so I came out of the programme with maybe 4,000 followers, and I put the rulers up on Instagram, and I sold 100 in half an hour. And I thought, okay, this is quite interesting. And it was really nerve-wracking. I'm sure you'll understand what I mean. It was really nerve-wracking sending them off, because I'm thinking, I'm not trained in product design. I did law. This is all kind of me just learning as I go along, as is everything that I've done in terms of sewing and knitting and so on. So I've got this idea, and I think it's useful. And now I'm saying to my community, what do you think? Here you go, here's my idea from my head. What do you think of this? And I found that really nerve-wracking. I remember taking the first batch to the post office thinking, oh God, what if everyone's like, oh, this is rubbish. So I guess that's the kind of impersonation syndrome as well. It's kind of, like I say, everybody's creative, and it's good to try and absorb that lesson. It's quite hard to absorb that if you haven't done the art school route, to tell you the truth. It's quite hard to kind of believe in yourself in that way, I think. Anyway, sent them off, and that was very successful. The Sewing Bee, I think, gave me a platform. I don't think it, people say, oh, you do the Sewing Bee so that you can start a business or do whatever it is you're planning to do in the sewing world. I don't think that's right. I think if you went into a programme like that, any of these programmes, thinking, I will do this programme and then go on and do X, Y, and Z, well, imagine if you go out and make one. You've totally screwed yourself. And I think it'd be too much pressure. So I would never say to anyone to go on thinking, yes, I will use it to do another thing. But for me, the growth was very organic. So it was a useful platform for me at the beginning. And now in the sewing community, people know me probably, I think probably within the sewing community, probably equally well for being on Sewing Bee, but also for what I do now. And certainly the international side of my business is all about my tools and not about having done the programme. And people in America get quite excited if they find out I was on the Sewing Bee, because then they try and find it, so find a way to watch it. So I did the ruler and kind of accidentally started this business. And about a year later, these ones here, I did my seam circles, which I designed as a way, all of my ideas I do because it's something that I need. And it's something that I want in my sewing world or my knitting world to make my life easier. Usually it's about making a boring process quicker. So it is actually my kind of range of lazy tools. But that's true of a lot of things, isn't it? So, and these I designed because I use quite a lot of patterns that come without seam allowances. And so you have to add on a seam allowance right around all these different shapes. And I wanted a way of doing that really quickly. And then I also use them to mark my stitching line, because I think if you sew, then what you need to do is pay attention to the bits where it matters. So anything around the neck, any features, you want that to be super accurate. And apart from that, you can kind of go a bit off piece. But so it's a way of me being accurate with that as well. And these immediately became a bestseller. At the moment, and I'm sure again, many of you might have some advice for me on this, I'm dealing with design theft with these. Somebody in China is actually selling them with my name on them, with my packaging, everything, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with that at the moment. So I've kind of complained to the various places that they're being, but it's like whack-a-mole, they just pop up. The advice I was given initially, I spoke to the intellectual property team at Edrington, so they're dealing with Macallan Whisky, so a good team to speak to. And their advice was always refer to your products by their name, because then you own the idea, you own the name, and actually that's more use than trying to, I can't see something in China, I'm just me, I don't have the money. So they were saying just, do that and try and sort of come up, just let it grow organically, go under the radar, get your name associated with the product, and then you own the original and you're always going to be the best. So I'm now at the point where I'm having to kind of see if that's worked. I'm trying to rely on that. And certainly if I found any shops buying wholesale from somebody who's copied me, I'd be on to them saying, no, you cannot sell that with my name on it. So we'll see what happens. If anyone's got any advice for me, please give it to me after this, because I'm seriously, just at the moment, I'm trying not to stress about it. So the seam circles I launched in 21. And at that point, I started doing the big sewing retail shows. There's the one in Glasgow that we met at, but most of them are down south. London ones are the biggest. And then a year later, I brought out my silicone hemmer. And this was born out of complete frustration. So you get hemmers which you use to fold over an accurate hem on a garment. Because it's amazing, even if you think you're good at judging measurement, when you're pressing a hem, I always grow. I don't know about you, I always get bigger by the time I come back round to where I should. Do you grow as well? Or
No, I'm giving you a 5-minute warning.
Oh, right. 5 minutes, that's fine. So yes, I thought, hemmers don't work. They need to be able to let the steam go through to the fabric. They should be made out of silicone. So I thought, right, well, I'll make them out of silicone. So I designed this, and that became my top seller at that point, almost straight away. And I sent them all over the world. And then so that was a year later. That was 22. Then 23, I brought out a thing for knitting. Actually, I brought out a pattern tracker, which lets you see what you've done as well as what you're doing. So that's really vital. If you're doing colour work or anything you work from a chart, you want to see what you've done as well as what you're doing to make sure you're in the right place. Okay, I've not got a picture of that. And then this year, I brought out this hammer, which I'm calling the Flex. I found out that Flex is a slang word in the States. And I thought, well, no, what have I called it? Because I've got quite a big market in the States. I'm like, oh no, if I called it something rude, but it's not, it just means it's quite good. So that's dodged a bullet. You know, you see names of cars and you think, why did they call it that? Did they not do their research? Well, I didn't do any research, I'm just that much cool. Anyway, because my business is just me, so I wear all the hats, I'm doing everything at the moment. So the Flex is a way you can dictate the shape of that, so it can go in either direction. You can use it on a straight or you can bend it in either direction. This one has gone crazy, and this is the point where I'm now feeling quite scared about what I'm doing. I would be quite happy if one of the big haberdashery companies came to me and said, we'll buy your design from you for lots of money. I'd be like, thanks very much. So at the moment I'm going through, the whole thing about patenting, about trying to work out how to scale up production and being contacted by distribution agents. Like just had the biggest distribution agent in Canada contact me to say, can we carry your hemmers? So all of that, I mean, it's great. You start a business and probably that's what you hope for. But at the same time, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really think about the practicalities or the realities of that. And the reality for me this week is I was doing a show in Harrogate until Sunday. Came back up the road on Sunday night, and since Sunday night I have literally worked from about 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day trying to sort out, send out orders, wholesale orders, get more packaging in, do everything. As I say, I'm kind of wearing all the hats. So I need to kind of start to work out what I can delegate. I need to get people in to help me, but then how do you work out what to delegate? All these things, and nobody really kind of explains to you how to do all that, do they? So I think we all reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, you have to figure it out.
Which is why communities like this are amazing. Yeah. So this one, it's been fantastic. As I say, I'm at the moment feeling a kind of fairly low-grade anxiety the whole time about it, because I'm just like, how do I deal with all of this? But it's also, I'm very grateful for for the interest in it and for the enthusiasm that it's had from sewers. It was interesting, my husband came down to do the Harrogate show with me. I don't normally take him on tour. I normally do the shows with a friend who's got a small sewing business as well, and we share the space so we can help each other. But my friend couldn't do it, so I took my husband. And I think it's quite interesting for him to see the sewing community. He was astonished at how big the sewing community is. I mean, this is one show in the north of England, and it's 4 huge halls full of businesses all selling stuff, and also to kind of meet people who are enthusiastic about what I do, and to see me in action telling people about it or whatever. So it was quite an interesting. Sometimes you just kind of take a step back and you see what's going on from a distance. It was like one of those moments where I thought, oh, this is quite cool. I'm really lucky. I feel really fortunate in what I've done. I still feel a bit like a fraud. But I feel very fortunate, and as I say, if anyone's got any advice for me, then grab me. And has anyone got any questions about anything? My cousin worked for a Finnish company, and the first time she presented, it was Nokia, and she had quite a senior role. And the first time she presented to the Finnish company, to this group, And at the end, she kind of got through the presentation and she said, right, now I can take questions. And everyone just sat there. And nobody had any questions. So she went, okay. So then they had coffee afterwards, and one of her colleagues came up and she said, oh, that was awful. And he said, what do you mean? And she said, that was awful. Nobody had any questions. And he's like, no, that's because you told us everything. So,
you could take it as a compliment.
Yeah, I think that was a really good analysis.
I actually do have a question. Not because you didn't tell us lots of good stuff, but before I ask mine, does anybody else have a question? No? Okay. So I know you mentioned, or actually Laura mentioned in your intro, like all the different things you've done before this. And you kind of went into sewing bee, not really knowing, not necessarily thinking you're going to parlay that into, but did you? I mean, so is this it for you? Are you now the sewing person? Is like this your career now, or do you think this is like you're doing this because you had that and now you might do something? Like, how is that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because ideally, I would run this, I'd have fun with it for a wee while longer and then I would sell the designs. I'm 55. I kind of don't really want to be doing sewing shows in 5 years' time. I need to stop working so hard. I can't imagine not doing something, though, and I do have an idea for a book. I've got a couple of ideas, actually, and I kind of spoke loosely to a publisher about one of them, so that might happen. Because on Instagram, I've got an idea about a book helping children to learn to sew, because I'm quite evangelical about people sewing. I think it's one of the most useful things you can do, and I think especially what I find as I get older is that it releases me from being pigeonholed by shops. So as you know, as you get older, I saw a graphic once of the changing body shapes, and it was kind of like the evolution of man in reverse. It was quite depressing. But it does mean that, obviously you know yourself, you go into shops and you know which shops are going to work for you and which shops don't, and that's because of the block they use, that's because of the basic pattern shapes that they use for their clothes. And what I find is that as I get older that I'm not going to shop in Marks and Spencer's Classics, I'm sorry, that's not happening. So it liberates me from that. And also it allows me to use waste fabric, and it allows me to wear whatever it is I want to wear and to kind of be creative in that process. So I do think it's a fantastic skill to have, and how much fun is that to be able to make your own clothes and kind of wear whatever you want to wear. So I had an idea about a book for children, to get children into sewing, but then I also do Hogg hacks on Instagram, so I do sewing tips where I use that sometimes kitchen equipment, other things that I find useful to, like for example, if you do sew, a fantastic one is that if you get a Teflon oven liner, interfacing doesn't stick to it. Okay, so if you sew, you know what I mean by that. Really, really useful. So things like that, and that is a possibility for a book as well, to draw my Hogg hacks together. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm done yet with the careers. I've had quite a few. And it's also, I think my kids kind of look at that and think, yeah, actually, you don't have to commit to, you can do something for a while and then use what you built there to kind of go sideways a bit. And Laura and I were talking about this as well, about kind of the fact that we do all these different things and maybe we don't quite find our path. If I'd had better advice at school and had somebody who told me I could do textiles and didn't have to do it at Gala Shields, I might have done textiles. Or tried to do textiles and not being arrogant in that. So if I had done that, would I be doing what I'm doing now? Probably not, I guess. Because I think it is a combination of, being a lawyer, having a business, all these different things that kind of led me to this point. So we're the sum of our experience.
The evolution of,
yeah. So I think that whatever it is we all do actually probably builds to give us what we are now. Yeah. Which is also a good way to think about it, rather than I wasted all those bloody years and
Yeah, I'm sure it comes in handy when you have to do contracts and things like that.
So lawyer and Glasgow.
Don't
mess with me.
Right. Any other questions? Lovely. Well, thank you very much.